Aurora LUMADUE was a faithful servant to her community and church. She was one of the hardest working members of the Art Center's Day of the Dead Committee for 11 years. She did whatever was needed and more to ensure the success of an event that has drawn more than 2,000 people each year to the Des Moines Art Center. It is fitting that she be honored for her community involvement and for her contribution to the Des Moines Art Center and the Hispanic community.
I'm the youngest sibling of 9 children. So Aurora was already married when I was growing up, but I do remember being the flower girl in her wedding. And when I was 13, I began babysitting for her. She took me on vacations with them, and I remember her buying me presents, especially clothes.
See, I was the youngest of the Bejaranos. My sister Aurora was, she was the 4th in the family, and she was a little older than I was. I think the first thing I remember is that she was working. She had graduated from high school, and it seems to me that she was working for a cosmetic firm. After either her or my other 2 sisters, older sisters, began working, we'd always, payday, they'd always take me down to the dime store downtown.
We met like at Roadside Settlement, where they had programs for the youth, and every Thursday they would have dances, and we would ride our streetcar from West Des Moines, which in those days was Valley Junction, to downtown Des Moines, and then take the streetcar or the bus from downtown Des Moines to Roadside Settlement. The building is still there. It stands at East 6th and Scott Avenue. And Aurora and I have spent a lifetime, I would say, together. She was in my wedding. She was one of my madrinas. Also, as time went by and we had children, we were comadres. She was the godmother to my son Brian, and I am godmother to her daughter Cynthia.
One of Aurora's closest friends was Sister Joyce Bloom, a nun of the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration. She spent 13 years as a missionary in a school in El Salvador and did not see her family in Iowa for many years.
I was trying to get myself situated on this side of the border again. And you know, when this position came open in St. Teresa's, I had never been in the capital, in Des Moines, and I thought, oh my goodness, what would it be to get something part-time, pastoral care in Des Moines, and then in St. Teresa's. And then finding this nice, soft, gentle, loving Aurora, you know, at St. Teresa, that was a big drawing card too. Then I right away felt at home.
Aurora was known for her hospitality. She enjoyed being the host. The minute we got there, it was, oh, what can I get you to drink? We knew just by the smell that something good was going to, we were going to enjoy.
Aurora knew that I did not have a family. I was the only child left after World War II. She would invite me and my family to her family gatherings and included me as one of their family members, which she was very generous, not only to me, but to all the people in the community.
I know that Aurora had an enormous, and by my standards, I was one of 2 children, and my mother always said she had 2 only children. But Aurora's family was big and close, and they came together several times a year. I was always a little envious of those stories, and I asked her if I could be a grandson, just sort of, you know, an honorable grandson. And she said, first, you are too old to be my grandson, and second, I am too young to be your grandmother. And that ended that. Aurora was, you know, great about extending her love and her hospitality, but she drew the line at actually claiming me for a relative.
There was about a month or so that I stayed at Aurora's. That's how welcoming that little holy lady was. You know, you were just, aquí está tu casa, ¿verdad? Mi casa es tu casa. My house is your house. You know, she lived that thing. He said, well, sister, how long you think you'll be here? Oh, I said, it's going to be about a month, I think. Well, she said, you know, July 4th is when all my family comes together, and there might be about 150, 200 people that are here. But you can come back for that day because we are a big family.
Sister Joyce was a great pal to my mom, and funny story about Sister Joyce is that she remembered there was a street in Des Moines called Aurora, and she's like, oh, Aurora, that's named after your mother.
I love that name, by the way. At the wake, I had to talk all about her name because I couldn't believe anybody could have a baptism name of Aurora and have a street named after her. And I've always been real jealous of that, you know, and I thought, when will Sister Joyce ever get a street named after her? But yeah, Aurora was connected with so many organizations.
We attended many activities together, including conferences, Catholic Women's League, the League of United Latin American Citizens.
Boley was very active in LULAC, and she was honored with LULAC Woman of the Year.
I remember Isla saying that she was treasurer of the LULAC, and she was always making sure that the books were to the penny.
We started an organization called the 12 Stars. There were 12 young ladies, and we thought that this is a good way to start a sorority or an organization. The 12 Stars thought a good thing would be to write to the servicemen and to send cookies and encouragement to let them know that we're back home thinking about them and they hadn't been forgotten.
She was so quiet and yet so effective. You know, the same skills that she brought to the Day of the Dead altar as an assistant, as a person who was there, she brought to every organization she was ever in. LULAC, the Catholic Women's League. She was a quiet force of nature.
The Catholic Women's League is a group of women in the Des Moines Diocese that gather about 4 times a year. I was asked to join the league, and immediately I was asked to be on the board. So therefore, that's where Aurora's position was. It was on the board, and she welcomed me. She kind of brought me in. She's very loving and very helpful, and I knew she was a very important part of that board and that membership. So Aurora being in charge of the membership and so forth, and that was her job, it was a huge job. She and I worked very closely together on that. And I will say that this woman was attention to detail. She edited for me, and first she got all her information that I needed, and then through the whole summer we worked on putting this yearbook together. And I mean to tell you, dot the I's and cross the T's several times before, and she had it perfect. And it was a experience I'll never forget. That's for sure.
We would always listen to Mexican music together, even though our children would say, "Oh, that again?" We said, "Yep."
Didn't matter what time of year it was, she'd have Mexican music playing, and she'd have her little boom box out there on the back porch, and she'd turn on the Mexican music, and sometimes we danced to it, but loved listening to that.
She had everything that you would ever want for a workshop that expressed Hispanics. Flowers, a costume, all of those things, of colors, song. She had all of that. In the school classrooms, we did ever so many times making those beautiful flowers. And Aurora knew how to make those, and we would make them with the children.
There was lots of friends in the neighborhood. She opened up her house to them. She welcomed them anytime, come over. She had food for them. She let them play in the house. We hung out with lots of kids. She always remembered them, what happened to your one friend that used to do this? And just very inviting to any friend that we had. Even as we got older, friends would come over for Thanksgiving, they'd come over for Christmas. She always welcomed them. 4th of July parties, make sure you invite your friends over. Just a very open, welcoming, caring woman that she was.
Home life with Aurora was busy. Aurora worked nights for many years, so she would take us to school, come home, and she'd rest. And then we'd go to school and she'd pick us up. And we usually had a lot of functions, and if we had to go to sports or wherever we wanted to go, she would take us. I don't know how she had the energy, but she did it. I went on a trip to France when I was 16. And I just asked her a few years ago, I'm like, how did you afford that trip? And she said, well, I got 2 jobs. I'm like, oh, I never knew that. I'm like, well, thank you, Mother. That was the kind of person she was.
She loved to cook. I remember her cooking tortillas all the time, and she'd had the wooden dowel in the front of the drawer, and she'd pull that out, and she'd have flour all over the table, and just cooking them, and we as kids would be just eating them left and right, and she had her little cast iron skillet that she'd put on the stove to cook with, and loved to make tortillas. She made great salsa. Sometimes she thought it was just too hot for herself too, but it was just the best.
She loved to go to games. She loved to watch her kids play. She loved to watch her grandkids play. And she loved the Cyclones and the Hawkeyes. I remember sitting on the couch listening to the radio because it wasn't on TV, and we'd be screaming and hollering, or I'd call her at her house and did you see that? And she would just be crazy.
Aunt Patty, Aunt Margaret, Aunt Conch, always on the phone together. And there's a funny story about Aunt Margaret would call to see if Mom was watching the Iowa game. Did you see that play? Oh, I saw that play. Click. Call back a little bit later. Are you watching the news? Did you see that on the news? Yep, I did. Click. So she loved talking to her sisters. Her Aunt Patty was just like her best friend. Aunt Margaret, they were all best friends.
She had tons of friends, but it wasn't her friends were her families and her sisters. And that's who my mom was to me, was my best friend.
Aurora loved to sew. She was always hemming my slacks. She made curtains. And I remember when my children were little, she would make them outfits. And also she liked to cut hair. She cut hair for many members of our family. And you might say she was self-taught.
We made millions of enchiladas. She taught me so many different things. We laughed a lot. We read books. I would read a book and hand it to her, and movies we'd see, and with all of our kids, it was always special. She's a special person to my grandkids. They got to know her very well. They love my mother. I'm proud to say that.
Her Catholic faith was very important to her. She attended daily Mass and participated in many charitable acts, including the angel tree.
St. Teresa's have a Christmas tree every Christmas, in which they put names of families that have families that are incarcerated.
And she would push that thing at St. Teresa and put up the tree, a couple trees with all the names of the families that needed, that had a son or daughter that could use some Christmas gift because the parent was inside the walls.
She did it for years, and she did it, in fact, the day she had a fall, we went to her house, and she had presents there, and she had just finished the angel tree. So she was really concerned, oh no, when we found out how long she'd been there, she was she had things to do, but fortunately she just finished that. And then this year I found out that they didn't do the angel tree, and they were so disappointed, but my mom was let it for so long, and they're kind of waiting for somebody to pick it back up because it takes so much energy to do.
Everyone knew her at church. She was always involved in the funeral committees. getting committees together to bake foods for the funerals, planning events in the basement of the St. Teresa's Church. So she was very involved in her church.
She was involved in all phases of her church. She would attend Mass every morning, every day. And then she was in charge of a lot of her programs, like the Christmas tree program. She was also involved in the Catholic Women's League, and very devout person and a person that you could depend upon. Aurora was also a very humble person. Although she was very, very religious, she didn't push it upon you. She was the type of individual that you've heard of the word, actions speak louder than words, but this lady lived it every day of her life.
As far as I can remember, she's always been involved with the church. Of course, the whole family was brought up with the church. I remember we lived on, they call it the Southeast Bottoms on Scott Street, and I can remember walking to visitation. That's what the church that we belonged to at that time. I think we were raised with the idea that the main thing for Christmas was the birth of our Lord, and that's the way we were brought up. And so I think I remember Aurora telling us that it wasn't until after she started working that she began buying gifts for the family. And but other than that, I don't remember ever receiving any gifts from anyone.
My mother prayed the rosary daily. She always had some beads with her. In her purse she had beads. She had beads everywhere. My aunts and uncles, they would go to different houses and pray the rosary. I know that was a big part of her life. We definitely did that when she died. We did it at her bedside. Yeah, that was very important to her.
The rosary was always special for Aurora too. And then, you know, she was probably one of the creators of the rosary that group of mommies would call the Rosary of Healing. It was a litany. We would take that rosary, and when we would have somebody that was home in hospice now, and Aurora would say, let's go visit, and we'll do the rosary, the litany of healing. And you know, when we say healing, it's not probably that the person is going to get up and walk and dance, but that something's going to happen to their heart. When Aurora was in intensive care too, here so long, you know, and we would stand by the bed and take her hand, and she would always speak with her hand and the eyes. And we're going to pray the litany of healing, and we would take the rosary, and she would accompany us.
Well, when I met Aurora, we were researching her family because we were honoring for that first Day of the Dead celebration, we honored her mother, Maria.
We asked Aurora to bring pictures of her mother and to tell us the story about her mother and family, in which she did. And she was so interested in how we were doing this program that she was excited about joining and has been a member ever since.
We're giving these to the honorees, those that came in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they're descendants of these people, all of the ones, so they're entitled to one of these. For this special day for them.
Aurora and Isla worked with the families, and they were the bridge between the art center and the community, and they helped to collect photographs and other wonderful memorabilia that would be placed on the ofrenda.
As a committee member, Aurora was always responsible to see that the flowers that we put on the altar were in perfect order. We would go to her home, and in her basement we would sit and make flowers by the hours, and because it does take a lot of flowers for this program, and she took it upon herself to be sure that every flower was in perfect order.
She was just our go-to person. It was wonderful working with Aurora. She and others invested just endless hours year after year to ensure that the Day of the Dead event would reflect really well on the Art Center.
Vince Bejarano has worked at the Art Center for 14 years in the Education Security Department. He also acts as a greeter to the visitors and said it was nice to see his sister Aurora come to the Day of the Dead committee meetings while he was working.
She's always been involved with the Day of the Dead committee at the Art Center. I think she started from day one, but if it wasn't day one, it was day two. So, but she's always been there that I can remember.
She would make paper flowers at home. She would tell me about the meetings. She would seem like she was always going to the Day of the Dead meetings, and she recruited us to work with the members of the committee too. When the committee honored my grandmother, that was amazing. You know, I thought, wow. You know, and I learned a lot about my grandmother I never knew. Mother is an honoree this year, but if she knew, she would probably kill us. She never would want that recognition. I'm sure she would be proud, but I think she liked to be helpful but be in the background. I was really hesitant, but then, you know, I talked to a few friends and they're like, you know, your mom deserves it. She did a lot for everybody. She deserves it.
In every family, there's someone that takes charge of everything. And in our family, I think it was my sister Aurora. She had the family together every July 4th. It seemed like she would have the family together, and kind of like the glue that held the family together. Everybody has them, and she was the glue of our family. I do think that she is very deserving, and I'm very proud of her.
I would like Aurora to be remembered as a warm, caring person. She was a servant, and by that I mean she was always looking for ways to help people. She was a leader, and she held offices in most of the organizations that she belonged to. She never looked for recognition for what she did. She made friends easily. I thank God that she was a part of my life, and I would call Aurora a good and faithful servant.
The biggest values I think my mom gave to me were to remember where you came from. Her heritage and her faith were so important to her. And she, like, we didn't have much, but you would never know that because she gave to everybody. If you don't have the money to give, you have your time. She made sure there was a way we could do something for someone. But I didn't know how many people she did those things for. That was what was really amazing to me. That no wonder she wouldn't answer her phone because she was always doing something, you know? Yeah.
They brought her home from Iowa City on one of the snowiest days of the year. I mean, it was treacherous out, and I wanted to see her one more time. And she smiled at me, and she couldn't speak, but she was happy. I think she was happy to see me. I felt so a part of her passing, you know, and it just made me feel good. Her courage and the fact that she knew where she was going, and it just broke my heart. But I knew she was going to be happy, and because she impressed that on me. She said she was not afraid, and so I knew where I was going. So that really impressed me, and she was very lovely, a lovely, lovely lady, and I still miss her.
I think the biggest legacy that my mother left was, you're not the only one in the world. Make sure you're helping the others. Be caring, volunteer, do something for your community. Make sure that your name is well kept. Just do some good. Don't just think about yourself. Make sure you're thinking about others.
My life has changed religiously because of Aurora, because she has made an impact on not only me personally, but all the people around her. She has made a tremendous difference. I have a card that I found one day that really describes my friendship with Aurora. And even though I did not give her this card. I would like to read it because this is really our true friendship. And it goes like this: the beautiful blessing of friendship. Some friendships are a blessing because people freely share, are willing to be honest, and reveal how much they care. Some friendships are a blessing because gentle, thoughtful ways are used to offer comfort and to give advice or praise. Some friendships are a blessing because memories of past years are filled with deep emotions shared in times of joy or tears. Every kind of friendship is a precious work of art, for friendship is a blessing and a treasure of the heart. I give thanks to God always for the beautiful blessing of our friendship.
Aurora is one of our beautiful women in our Roman Catholic Church. You know, we as women have waited our turn to be able to take leadership roles. And I think Aurora steps forward all the time to take leadership roles. She's done it, you know, in her different organizations. She's done it at church. She's stood in that first pew. She speaks up. She's gentle. She's a holy woman. As I began to walk in the city here, you know, I would see Aurora and I knew I was always welcome at her house. She loved me. She would help me to do anything I needed, you know. Just the best mother, sister, woman that anybody would ever want to get to know. I just feel very privileged that I got to be at her house, get to know some of her family members, and that she was always right there when I needed help too, to be my supporter.
She was one of those people who can do so much with such grace. It was something that I looked at and wondered at because she never let you see that she was working. She had immense, you know, integrity. She was thoughtful. She was quiet, and yet she got so much done.
She inspired me with her gentle and determined ways of moving in the world, and Aurora fed us. She fed our souls, she fed our bellies. We often went to her wonderful home for meetings or to make the Mexican paper flowers for the ofrenda. The Art Center, of course, was very fortunate to have her as a longtime and very loyal volunteer. She was quite a significant Art Center ambassador. I was very lucky to have her as a dear friend.
Her door was always open to family, friends, or anybody that needed someone to talk to.
In everybody's life, there's times when you need someone that you can go talk to and know that whatever you're saying will stay with her. And so I've always considered her more than a sister. I've considered her a sister and a friend.